Step out of the car. Now. The flashlight beam slammed through the driver's window hard enough to bleach the color from the woman's face. Red and blue lights pulsed across the empty Louisiana highway. Cicadas screamed from the swamp beyond the guardrail. A rusted 18-wheeler thundered past, shaking the shoulder of Route 9. Officer Craig Dutton stood beside the sedan with one hand resting on his belt and the other tapping the glass with a thick metal flashlight. "You think you can roll through my county looking like that and nobody notices?" His voice carried across the dark highway. Two truckers parked near the gas station across the road glanced over. One quickly looked away. The woman inside the car lowered her window slowly. "Officer, was I speeding?" Dutton laughed. "Short. Mean. That is your first mistake. Talking before I tell you to." He leaned down until the brim of his hat nearly touched the glass. "License. Registration. And keep your hands where I can see them." The woman handed him the documents without shaking. That bothered him immediately. Most people trembled. Most people apologized before he even accused them of anything. This woman sat straight-backed in an old gray jacket with rainwater still clinging to the shoulders. No jewelry. No makeup. No fear. Just tired eyes and a small leather notebook resting beside her coffee cup. Dutton looked at the out-of-state plates and smirked. "Virginia." He dragged the word out slowly. "Long way from home, sweetheart. I am only passing through." "No," he stared at her for a beat too long. "You are paying through." The truckers at the gas station pretended not to hear. A teenage cashier inside the store froze beside the coffee machine. Everyone in Redfield knew Route 9 after midnight belonged to Craig Dutton. He did not patrol roads. He hunted them. "Step out of the vehicle." The woman obeyed calmly. Gravel crunched under her shoes. The humid air wrapped around them like wet cloth. Dutton circled her once, slow and deliberate, letting the flashlight drift over her clothes, her old sedan, the cheap motel receipt sticking from her dashboard. "This your car?" "Yes." "You carrying drugs?" "No weapons." "No cash?" She paused for half a second. "Enough for gas." Dutton smiled wider. "See? That right there. Little hesitation. Means you are hiding something." He shoved her lightly toward the hood. Hands flat. The metal was still warm from the engine. She placed her palms down without argument. Her fingers were steady. That irritated him even more. "You people always think you can talk your way out. I have not argued with you once. There you go again." His voice sharpened. "Acting smart. Have you ever watched somebody abuse power simply because they believed nobody would stop them?" Dutton pulled a small flashlight from his pocket and aimed it through the back seat. A faded duffel bag. Fast food wrappers. A road atlas with folded corners. Nothing illegal. That had never mattered before. "I can tow this junk tonight," he said casually. "Or I can save us both some paperwork." He stepped closer. 200 cash. The woman finally turned her head slightly toward him. "For what violation?" Dutton's jaw tightened. "You really want to do this?" "I asked a question. And I am telling you the answer costs $200. One of the truckers shifted near the diesel pumps. For a second, it looked like he might walk over. Dutton glanced toward him once. The man immediately lowered his head and returned to fueling his truck. Microseconds. That was all fear needed. The woman looked toward the gas station window where the teenage cashier stood frozen. Then back at Dutton. "If I refuse?" Dutton grabbed her shoulder hard enough to slam her against the hood. The coffee inside her cup splashed across the windshield. "Then I make your life difficult." His voice dropped low now. "Dangerous. Intimate. I can search this car all night. I can call AK-9. I can say you resisted. He leaned closer. And around here? Judges trust my word over yours every single time. A phone appeared near the gas station window. Somebody was recording now. Dutton noticed it instantly. Put that damn phone down, he barked across the road. The teenager vanished from the glass. Silence settled again except for the insects buzzing in the dark swamp grass. The woman still had not raised her voice. Her cheek pressed against the hood for a moment before she straightened slowly. Dutton noticed something then. Not fear. Not panic. Calculation. Her eyes moved once toward the bodycam attached to his chest. Then toward the patrol car dashboard where another recording light blinked faint red through the windshield. You got something funny to say? He asked. No, then stop looking at me like that. She said nothing. Dutton snatched the motel receipt from the dashboard and crumpled it in his fist. Red Pine Motel. He laughed again. Figures. He tossed the receipt at her chest. It bounced off and landed in a puddle beside the tire. People like you always come through here thinking rules do not apply. People like me. For the first time, there was something different in her tone. Quiet. Controlled. Dutton stepped closer until they were almost nose to nose. Out-of-towners. Drifters. Liars. His hand hovered near his holster now. Last chance. $200. The woman looked at him for a long moment. Then her right hand moved slowly toward the inside pocket of her jacket. Dutton's posture snapped tight instantly. Hey. His voice exploded across the highway. Keep those hands where I can see them. The truckers turned again. One whispered, Jesus Christ. Dutton grabbed her wrist before she could reach inside the jacket. But not before the edge of a black leather case became visible beneath the fabric for half a second. Small. Worn. Official looking. Dutton did not recognize it yet. But the moment he touched her wrist, the expression on her face changed completely. Not scared. Not trapped. Certain. Then the police radio inside Dutton's cruiser suddenly crackled alive behind them. Unit 12, dispatch said sharply through static. What is your status out there? The radio crackled again through the humid Louisiana night. Unit 12, respond. Craig Dutton kept his eyes locked on the woman's jacket pocket. His grip tightened around her wrist. The black leather edge had disappeared back beneath the fabric, but something about it bothered him now. Not fear. Recognition. Somewhere deep in the back of his mind, a warning bell had started ringing. What is in your pocket? He demanded. The woman looked at him calmly. You tell me, officer. The truck stop lights buzzed across the highway. One of the truckers climbed into his cab fast and locked the door. Nobody wanted to be seen watching this. That was how Route 9 survived. Fear did half the work for men like Craig Dutton. Dutton released her wrist suddenly and stepped back toward his cruiser. His boots crushed loose gravel under the flashing lights. He grabbed the radio mic roughly. Traffic stop. Everything is under control. His voice sounded harder than before. Tighter. You sure about that? Dispatch asked after a pause. Dutton glanced back toward the woman. She still stood beside the hood without moving. Rainwater dripped slowly from her gray sleeve onto the pavement. Yeah, he muttered. I am sure. He slammed the radio back into place. For a second, nobody spoke. Then the woman quietly picked up the motel receipt he had thrown into the puddle. The paper was soaked now. Wrinkled. Torn along one corner. She smoothed it carefully against the hood like it still mattered. Little things. People who had spent years losing battles usually protected little things. You got family waiting somewhere? Dutton asked suddenly. Why? Because if you disappear into county holding tonight, somebody ought to know where the body is buried. He grinned after saying it. The kind of grin men used when cruelty had become entertainment. The teenage cashier inside the gas station heard it through the cracked door. His face tightened. He looked down at the phone still recording in his trembling hands. The woman folded the ruined receipt once and slipped it into her jacket pocket beside whatever else she was hiding there. "My family already knows where I am," she said. Dutton stared at her again. Calm. Too calm. It irritated him worse than screaming would have. 3 hours earlier, the woman had been sitting alone inside a small roadside diner 40 miles north of Redfield. A coffee pot hissed behind the counter. Rain tapped softly against the windows. The waitress called everybody honey, no matter their age. The woman sat in the back booth beneath a flickering Budweiser sign, studying a folded highway map marked with circles and handwritten notes. Route 9. Redfield. Pike County Courthouse. Maddox Towing. Beside the map sat a thin stack of Polaroid photographs. Bruised wrists. Broken headlights. Crumpled citations. One showed an old black truck driver standing beside his impounded rig with tears in his eyes. Another showed a young mother holding a foreclosure notice outside a trailer home. The waitress refilled her coffee slowly. "You passing through?" The woman nodded once. "Something like that. Be careful in Redfield after dark." The waitress lowered her voice instinctively. "Some roads down there got bad habits." The woman looked up carefully. "What kind of habits?" The waitress froze immediately. Fear crossed her face like a shadow. She forced a quick smile and stepped away before answering. Even here, people watched their words. The woman reached into her bag and pulled out an old photograph worn soft around the edges. A younger man in mechanic coveralls stood beside a faded blue pickup truck. Smiling. Honest face. Her thumb rested against the photo for a long moment. Then she tucked it away again before anyone could see. On the table beside her sat a black leather case no larger than a wallet. Closed. Unmarked. A little girl from the next booth wandered over holding a coloring book. "Are you a lawyer?" the child asked. The woman blinked in surprise. "Why would you think that?" "Because you look serious." The little girl pointed toward the highway map. "And because people only carry folders like that when somebody is in trouble." For the first time all evening, the woman smiled slightly. Small. Real. Sometimes trouble deserves company. Have you ever been judged guilty before anybody bothered asking who you really were? The little girl's father quickly hurried over and pulled her back toward their booth. "Sorry, ma'am," he whispered nervously. "She talks too much." The woman watched them leave. Her expression faded again almost instantly. Then her phone buzzed once against the table. A text message. Unknown number. "Leave Redfield tonight. You are asking questions people do not like." She read it without reacting. Deleted it. Finished the last cold sip of coffee. Back on Route 9, Craig Dutton walked slowly around her car again. This time he noticed something taped beneath the passenger visor. A tiny silver sticker no larger than a fingernail. Federal property markings. His stomach tightened slightly before he could stop it. He leaned closer toward the windshield. And that was when he saw the second thing. A tiny blinking green light hidden near the dashboard. Craig Dutton's face changed the second he saw the blinking green light beneath the dashboard. Not panic. Not yet. But something colder. Calculation. His flashlight beam stayed fixed on the windshield while swamp air rolled heavy across Route 9. "What the hell is that?" he asked quietly. The woman did not answer. A pickup truck slowed as it passed them. The driver looked over, saw Dutton standing beside the car, then accelerated immediately. Nobody stopped for traffic stops in Redfield County. People here learned early which side survived. Dutton opened the passenger door roughly and leaned inside. Fast food wrappers slid onto the floorboard. The road atlas fell open beside the seat. Names were circled in blue ink. Pike County Courthouse. Maddox Storage Yard. Route 9 checkpoint markers. His eyes narrowed. "You been asking questions?" The woman stood beside the hood silently. "Answer me." "I am traveling." "That is not what I asked." He reached under the visor and peeled off the tiny silver sticker with his thumbnail. Federal property. The letters were almost invisible beneath the dirt. Dutton stared at it for one long second. Then he shoved it into his pocket before anyone else could see. Across the road, the teenage cashier stepped halfway out of the gas station holding a mop bucket. His eyes moved from Dutton to the woman and back again. "Officer Dutton," he asked nervously. "Everything okay?" Dutton snapped toward him instantly. "Get back inside." The boy hesitated. "I just thought maybe," I said. "Get back inside." The kid disappeared immediately. The door slammed shut. Silence again. That was the rhythm of this town. One raised voice from the right man could erase courage in seconds. 20 miles away, inside the Pike County Sheriff's Office, fluorescent lights buzzed above a stained coffee machine. Sheriff Earl Maddox stood in front of a television mounted near the booking desk watching muted local news. Heavy-set. Gray mustache. Gold sheriff star stretched tight across his chest. Deputy Collins walked in carrying paperwork. Dutton called in another stop. Maddox barely looked over. "Cash or towing?" "Probably both." Collins hesitated. "People are starting to talk." Maddox finally turned toward him. "People always talk." "No, sir. I mean online." Collins held up his phone. A blurry video thumbnail showed flashing police lights on Route 9. Comments were already stacking beneath it. Somebody typed, "Same cop who took my brother's truck last year." Another wrote, "Redfield highway robbery again." Maddox grabbed the phone and shut the screen off. "Delete that. It is already spreading." "Then spread fear faster." His voice stayed calm. "That is how order works." Back on the highway, Dutton circled the woman slowly again. "You know what your problem is?" he asked. "You think you are smarter than the room." "What room?" "This county." He pointed toward the darkness beyond the road. "Everybody here survives because they know when to keep their mouth shut." The woman finally spoke. "And what happens to people who do not?" Dutton smiled thinly. "You are looking at it." A diesel engine growled nearby. One of the truckers finally stepped down from his cab holding a thermos. Older black man. Weathered face. He looked toward the woman for a long moment before speaking carefully. "Officer, maybe she should just get a warning." Dutton turned slowly. "Dangerous now." "You giving orders tonight, Marcus?" "No, sir." "Then remember your lane." Marcus lowered his eyes immediately, but not before the woman noticed the faded towing invoice sticking from his dashboard. Maddox Storage and Recovery. $3,000 due. His hands trembled around the thermos. Dutton saw her looking. "That man still owes fees from last year," he said loudly. "Funny thing about debt. It follows people." The woman looked at Marcus gently. "You should go home." Marcus swallowed hard. "Ma'am, you should too." Tiny hope. Tiny warning. Then gone. Dutton suddenly grabbed the road atlas from inside the car and flipped through it aggressively. A folded photograph slipped loose and landed near his boot. He picked it up. A younger man standing beside an old blue pickup truck. Honest smile. Mechanic coveralls. On the back, written in faded ink, for Yvonne. Keep fighting. Dutton studied the name carefully. Yvonne. His eyes lifted slowly toward her. So now we finally got something real. The police radio crackled again. But this time the voice coming through dispatch sounded different. Sharper. Unit 12, dispatch said carefully. Sheriff Maddox wants you to bring the driver in personally. Dutton smiled without humor. You hear that? He folded the photograph once and slipped it into his pocket beside the federal sticker. Looks like the whole county wants to meet you now. The patrol car headlights cut through the swamp fog as Craig Dutton shoved the woman toward the back seat. Move. His voice echoed across the empty highway. The woman climbed in without resistance. Her wet sleeve brushed against the steel doorframe. Dutton slammed the door hard enough to shake the cruiser. Across the road, Marcus Reed still stood beside his truck holding the thermos against his chest. He watched silently as Dutton walked back toward him. You see anything tonight? Dutton asked. Marcus lowered his eyes immediately. No, sir. Good answer. Dutton pointed toward the highway. Then drive. Marcus hesitated 1 second too long. Dutton's expression darkened instantly. You want your truck impounded again? Marcus climbed into the cab without another word. The diesel engine roared alive and disappeared into the darkness. Fear moved people faster than laws ever could in Redfield County. Inside the cruiser, the woman sat quietly behind the security divider. Rain streaked down the windows in crooked lines. Dutton slid into the driver's seat and tossed the folded photograph onto the dashboard beside the crumpled motel receipt. Yvonne, he muttered while starting the engine. Pretty name for somebody making stupid decisions. She looked toward the dashboard camera. The tiny red recording light blinked twice. Then stopped. Dutton noticed her watching it. Broken, he said casually. Funny thing. Cameras in this county always seem to miss the important parts. The cruiser pulled onto Route 9. Trees blurred past beneath the flashing lights. Dutton drove with one hand while the other rested lazily near his holster. You know what your real problem is? He asked. You think rules protect people. Yvonne looked out the window. Sometimes they do. He laughed sharply. Not here. The Pike County Sheriff's Office sat at the edge of town beside an abandoned feed mill. Yellow floodlights washed over cracked concrete and rusted fencing. A Confederate-era cannon stood near the entrance like decoration from another century. The cruiser rolled into the lot. 2 deputies smoking near the side door looked up immediately. One nudged the other. Out-of-state plates. Probably another drug mule. Or activist. They laughed quietly. Dutton stepped out first and opened the rear door. Welcome to Pike County. Yvonne climbed out calmly. Her gray jacket was damp now. Gravel stuck to the bottom of her shoes. Deputy Collins eyed her carefully while opening the station door. She armed? Not unless attitude counts. The booking area smelled like burned coffee and bleach. Fluorescent lights buzzed overhead. A television mounted near the wall played muted local news while a drunk man slept on a bench beneath it. Sheriff Earl Maddox stood behind the booking desk with thick fingers wrapped around a styrofoam cup. He studied Yvonne slowly from head to toe. This her? Dutton tossed the folded photograph onto the counter. Been snooping around all week. Maddox unfolded the picture carefully. His eyes paused on the handwritten message on the back. For Yvonne. Keep fighting. Family? He asked. Somebody who taught me not to scare easily. Dutton smirked. That lesson did not stick. Maddox ignored him. He kept staring at Yvonne longer than expected. Not because he recognized her. Because something about her behavior did not fit. Most people dragged into Pike County after midnight shook. Cried. Explained too much. This woman stood still like she was observing the room instead of fearing it. Maddox slid the photograph back across the desk. You got identification? Yvonne reached slowly into her jacket pocket. Dutton immediately stepped forward. Careful. She removed a plain driver's license and set it on the desk. Virginia address. Nothing unusual. Maddox studied it. Traveling alone? Yes. Business? Research. Dutton laughed loudly. Hear that? She says research. Deputy Collins snorted. What kind? Yvonne looked directly at him. The kind people hide from. Silence hit the room for half a second. Small. Strange. Then Dutton slammed his palm against the booking desk hard enough to break it. Enough games. He pulled the federal property sticker from his pocket and tossed it beside the license. You want to explain this? Collins frowned immediately. Maddox picked up the silver sticker slowly between two fingers. His eyes narrowed. Where did you get this? Off her visor. Dutton leaned closer. And there is something else in that car. Some kind of hidden camera. Collins straightened instantly. You serious? Yvonne said nothing. Maddox looked back at her carefully now. Longer this time. The drunk man on the bench stirred awake just enough to mumble, that lady talks like a lawyer. Dutton snapped toward him. Shut up. But Maddox was no longer listening to the drunk. His eyes stayed locked on Yvonne. Then he quietly reached beneath the desk and pressed a button nobody else in the room could see. Somewhere deeper inside the station, a metal door buzzed open. The metal door buzzed again somewhere behind the booking area. Heavy footsteps echoed briefly through the sheriff's station, then stopped. Craig Dutton straightened immediately. Sheriff Maddox slid the silver federal sticker into a desk drawer and closed it with deliberate calm. Whatever concern had crossed his face vanished behind years of practiced authority. Interview room 2, Maddox said quietly. Dutton grinned. Gladly. He grabbed Yvonne's arm harder this time and steered her toward the hallway. Deputy Collins looked uneasy now. Sheriff, if there is federal equipment involved, maybe we should log. Did I ask your opinion? Maddox cut him off sharply. Silence. Collins lowered his eyes at once. Yvonne noticed that. Everybody in this building had learned the same survival skill. Obey fast. The hallway lights flickered overhead as Dutton pushed open the interview room door. Gray table. 2 steel chairs. 1 dusty camera mounted high in the corner. The air smelled like old cigarettes trapped beneath bleach. Dutton shoved her into the chair. Sit. Yvonne sat calmly. Her damp jacket sleeve brushed the edge of the metal table. Dutton stayed standing over her like he wanted the height advantage. You know what I think? He asked. I think you came down here trying to play investigator. He leaned closer. Maybe activist. Maybe journalist. Maybe one of those internet idiots filming cops for views. You seem worried about cameras. His jaw tightened instantly. Wrong answer. He slapped a thin incident form onto the table. Sign it. Yvonne glanced down. Disorderly conduct. Failure to comply. Suspicion of narcotics transport. 3 false charges typed in crooked lines. You wrote this before questioning me. I write whatever keeps the county safe. That is not law. Dutton laughed. Mean. Loud. Lady, law is whoever holds the keys. Outside the half-open door, Deputy Collins lingered near the booking desk pretending to sort paperwork. Another deputy whispered quietly, she does not look scared. Collins answered under his breath, that is what scares him. Inside the room, Dutton pulled the folded photograph from his pocket again. This man, he said. Who was he? Yvonne looked at the picture carefully before answering. A mechanic. You carry dead mechanics around for emotional support. He taught me to notice small things. Dutton smirked. Like hidden cameras? Yvonne's eyes shifted once toward the dusty interview room camera above them. Then back to Dutton. That one is disconnected. The room went still for half a beat. Dutton glanced upward instinctively. Tiny reaction. Tiny mistake. Yvonne noticed it immediately. You bluffing? He asked. Am I? He crossed the room fast and slammed his fist against the wall beneath the camera. You think you are smarter than me? I think you unplugged the recording system because witnesses make you nervous. Emotional spike. Silence swallowed the room. Even the deputies outside stopped moving. Dutton stared at her with something darker now. Not annoyance. Threat. Careful. His voice dropped low. People disappear in little counties like this. Yvonne said nothing. That made him angrier than fear ever could. The station phone rang sharply outside. Maddox answered it near the booking desk. Pike County Sheriff's Office. Pause. His face changed slightly. No, she is not here. Another pause. Wrong number. He hung up immediately. Collins frowned. Who was that? Nobody. But Maddox looked toward interview room 2 too quickly afterward. Micro-hope. Somebody outside this county was already asking questions. Then obstacle. Maddox locked the front entrance remotely with a loud metallic click. Dutton heard it and smiled slowly. Hear that? He said. Nobody leaves until we are done. He grabbed the incident form again and shoved it closer across the table. Sign it. No, then I impound your vehicle. That would require probable cause. Wrong county. He pulled a small evidence bag from his pocket and dropped it onto the table. White powder inside. Tiny amount. Yvonne's eyes narrowed almost invisibly. That bag has no chain of custody label, she said calmly. Dutton froze for one dangerous second. Deputy Collins looked up sharply from outside the doorway. Wait, where did that come from? Dutton snapped toward him instantly. Get back to work. Collins hesitated. Dutton stepped into the doorway now, voice rising. You got something to say, deputy? No, sir. Fear won again. Collins walked away. Dutton turned back toward Yvonne slowly. You should have signed the paper. He scooped up the evidence bag and slid it back into his pocket. Then he noticed something partially visible beneath the edge of Yvonne's sleeve. A thin black wire disappearing under the fabric near her wrist. His expression changed instantly. Cold. Focused. Predatory. Stand up, he said quietly. Now. Craig Dutton's eyes locked onto the thin black wire beneath Yvonne's sleeve. The room changed instantly. The air felt tighter. Smaller. What is that? He asked quietly. Yvonne stayed seated. Calm. You already searched me once. Stand up. She did not move immediately. That alone made Deputy Collins stop walking down the hallway outside. Nobody ignored Craig Dutton in this building. Nobody except her. Dutton slammed both palms onto the steel table. I said stand up. Slowly, Yvonne rose from the chair. The wire disappeared beneath the cuff of her jacket and down toward her waistband. Dutton reached for her arm aggressively. Do not touch me again unless you intend to document it properly. Silence. Sharp. Exact. Collins looked up from the hallway instantly. Maddox's eyes narrowed from behind the booking desk. Dutton laughed harshly to cover the flicker of uncertainty crossing his face. Hear that? He called toward the deputies outside. She watched a few cop shows and thinks she is a lawyer. Nobody laughed with him this time. Dutton grabbed Yvonne's sleeve and yanked it upward. A small black recording device clipped beneath her wrist became visible for one brief second. Tiny red light. Audio meter flickering. Deputy Collins froze. Jesus, Dutton ripped the device free immediately. You recording officers without consent, he barked loudly now, making sure everyone in the station heard him. That is obstruction. Yvonne's voice stayed level. Louisiana is a one-party consent state. Another silence. Short. Dangerous. Collins slowly looked toward Maddox. Even one of the older deputies near the coffee machine stopped moving. Dutton's jaw tightened hard enough to twitch. You memorized statutes. Only the important ones. Emotional spike. Dutton held up the recorder like it was contaminated. This? He laughed loudly again. This little toy does not mean a damn thing in my county. He tossed it onto the table beside the false incident report. The device slid across the steel surface and hit the folded photograph with a soft click. Then something happened nobody expected. The recorder screen blinked alive automatically from the impact. Audio file recovered. 2 hours 13 minutes and 44 seconds, a waveform appeared across the tiny display. Dutton stared at it. Collins stared at it. Even Maddox slowly stepped closer from the booking desk now. Through the recorder speaker came a faint crackling sound. Then a voice. Dutton's voice. 200 cash or I tow this piece of junk. The room went still. Nobody breathed for one long second. The drunk man on the bench lifted his head halfway awake. That sounds like Craig. Dutton lunged forward instantly and smashed his hand over the speaker. Faulty recording. His voice rose too fast. Too defensive. Audio can be edited. Yvonne watched him quietly. You knew the camera in your cruiser was off before the stop even began. Dutton pointed at her immediately. There. Right there. You hear that? He looked toward the deputies. That is baiting. She came here trying to trap officers. Collins shifted uncomfortably. Still, the recording sounds real. Maddox snapped toward him. Enough. Tiny hope. Then crushed immediately. Maddox picked up the recorder himself now. Heavy fingers turning it over carefully beneath the fluorescent lights. The device was scratched. Old. Used often. A small government inventory number was etched near the battery compartment. Half worn away. Maddox noticed it. His expression changed for half a heartbeat before he hit it again. What do you think this means? Yvonne asked quietly. Have you ever noticed how guilty people panic hardest when a machine simply repeats their own words back to them? Maddox shut the recorder off immediately. It means nothing yet. He handed it back toward Dutton. Bag it. Dutton smirked again, confidence returning piece by piece. Gladly. He pulled an evidence bag from the drawer and sealed the recorder inside. Obstacle. Evidence existed now. But it belonged to them. Collins watched nervously as Dutton wrote the tag. Then his eyes widened slightly. Wait, he leaned closer toward the bag. That inventory number, Dutton looked up sharply. What about it? Collins hesitated. Fear flickered across his face. I saw one like that before. Maddox stepped between them instantly. Go finish intake. Sheriff, I think it might be, now. Collins backed away immediately. Fear won again. But not before Yvonne noticed something important. Collins was no longer afraid of her. He was afraid of what he recognized. Dutton sealed the bag aggressively and shoved it into a locked drawer beneath the desk. There. He smiled coldly at Yvonne. Your little magic trick is gone. Yvonne looked at the drawer calmly. No, she said softly. Now it matters. The station fell quiet again. Then somewhere deeper inside the sheriff's office, a computer terminal suddenly emitted a sharp warning beep. Deputy Collins looked toward the screen. A red banner had appeared across the monitor. External access attempt detected. The sharp warning beep echoed through the sheriff's office again. Deputy Collins stared at the glowing monitor across the booking desk. Red letters flashed brighter now. External access attempt detected. System trace active. Craig Dutton moved instantly. Kill it. Collins hesitated. I do not know where it is coming from. Sheriff Maddox stormed toward the terminal and shoved Collins aside hard enough to rattle the keyboard. Disconnect the network. Already trying. Dutton looked back toward interview room 2. Toward Yvonne. The confidence in his face had started cracking around the edges. Tiny fractures. Tiny fear. Inside the interview room, Yvonne sat alone now. The steel chair scraped softly as she leaned back against the wall. Through the narrow glass window in the door, shadows moved fast across the booking area. Raised voices. Panic trying not to sound like panic. Yvonne lowered her eyes toward the empty spot on the table where the recorder had been. Her wrist still carried the faint pressure mark from the clip beneath her sleeve. Slowly, she slid her fingers into her jacket pocket and touched the folded motel receipt she had saved from the puddle. Crumpled. Damp. Ordinary looking. But hidden inside the fold was a tiny handwritten note in faded blue ink. Route 9. February 14th. Camera down 11:42 p.m. She closed her eyes briefly. Memory flashed across her face. Rain. Another highway. Another police cruiser. Her father standing beside an old blue pickup truck with his hands visible in the air. Sir, I already paid the citation. You calling me a liar? Then the sound of a baton striking metal. Her father's toolbox spilling across wet pavement. Wrenches rolling into the gutter while passing cars slowed to watch. Nobody stepping in. Nobody helping. Yvonne opened her eyes again. Calm returning piece by piece. She unfolded the old photograph Dutton had handled earlier. Her father smiled back at her from 20 years ago in stained mechanic coveralls. Honest face. Tired eyes. On the back, beneath the faded message, another line sat almost invisible from age. Never let them decide who you are. The interview room door suddenly opened. Deputy Collins stepped inside carrying a styrofoam cup of coffee. His hands shook slightly. Sheriff said no lawyer calls, he muttered awkwardly. But, you should probably drink something. Yvonne accepted the cup carefully. Thank you. Collins lingered near the door. That recorder, he lowered his voice. I heard Dutton say those things before. To other drivers. Collins nodded once. Shame crossed his face fast. People complained. Reports disappeared. And you stayed. Emotional spike. Collins swallowed hard. My father worked this station 30 years. That is not the same answer. Silence filled the room. Then Collins quietly said, I was 19 when they hired me. You tell yourself small compromises keep people safe. Then one day you wake up and realize fear became policy. He looked toward the hallway nervously before adding, your recorder scared them. Good. Tiny hope. Somebody inside the system was finally saying the truth out loud. Then obstacle. A loud crash echoed from the booking area outside. Maddox's voice thundered through the station. Who touched this terminal? Collins flinched immediately. Dutton stormed past the doorway holding a stack of printed records. Found this in her car. He slapped the papers onto the booking desk aggressively. Names. Dates. Vehicle numbers. Complaints. At least 60 entries. Maddox flipped through them rapidly. His face darkened more with every page. She has been tracking stops. Dutton pointed toward the interview room. I told you. She is building something. Collins looked at the paperwork carefully. One page partially slid loose from the stack. A photograph clipped to the corner. Marcus Reed beside his impounded truck. Date stamped 2 years earlier. Collins froze. I remember that day, he whispered before he could stop himself. Maddox looked up instantly. What? Collins stared at the photo. That stop was supposed to be on body cam. Silence. Dutton's face hardened. Camera malfunction. No, Collins said quietly now. I remember because dispatch logged the footage upload. The room changed. Small shift. Dangerous shift. Maddox stepped toward Collins slowly. You are getting confused. Am I? Dutton moved fast, grabbing the file stack off the desk. Papers scattered across the floor. One page slid through the open interview room doorway and stopped near Yvonne's shoe. She looked down calmly. At the top corner of the page was a partially visible federal seal beneath black marker ink. Somebody had tried to cover it. But not completely. Then the station phone rang sharply again. Maddox answered immediately. His expression drained of color after only 2 seconds. What do you mean they are already here? The color drained from Sheriff Maddox's face so fast even Deputy Collins noticed it. What do you mean they are already here? Maddox repeated into the phone, voice lower now. Controlled. Dangerous. Craig Dutton stopped moving entirely beside the booking desk. Every deputy in the station looked up. How many vehicles? Maddox listened another second, then slammed the receiver down hard enough to shake the counter. County inspectors, he announced immediately. Transportation compliance. Nobody fully believed him. The room had gone too tense for something ordinary. Dutton recovered first. He straightened his uniform and forced a confident grin back onto his face. Good, he said loudly. Maybe they can help process our trespasser. He pointed directly toward interview room 2 where Yvonne still sat behind the glass. Because this woman has been illegally recording officers, stalking county employees, and interfering with investigations. His voice carried through the station intentionally. Public performance now. Deputies watched. Dispatch clerks watched. Even the drunk man on the bench lifted his head again. Yvonne stayed seated. Calm. Maddox stepped beside Dutton and folded his arms. You got any idea what happens when outsiders come into a county fishing for lawsuits? Truth becomes expensive, Yvonne answered quietly. Dutton laughed sharply. Hear that? She talks like every failed activist on cable television. Deputy Collins shifted uncomfortably near the computer terminal. The red warning banner still flickered across the monitor behind him. System trace active. Connection unresolved. Maddox noticed Collins looking at it and snapped, kill that screen. Collins hesitated 1 second too long. Sheriff, it keeps reconnecting. Tiny hope. Tiny crack in the wall. Dutton immediately stepped in front of the monitor so the others could not see it clearly anymore. Then unplug it. The front doors opened suddenly. Cold night air rolled into the station. 2 county transportation officers stepped inside wearing reflective jackets. Ordinary men. Clipboards. Muddy boots. But the moment they entered, Maddox forced a smile that looked painful. Gentlemen, he said loudly, little misunderstanding tonight. We are handling it. One of the inspectors glanced toward Yvonne behind the interview room glass. That her vehicle outside? Evidence hold, Dutton answered quickly. Possible narcotics involvement. False accusation. Immediate. Public. One dispatcher quietly whispered, drugs. Another deputy muttered back, she did not look high. Dutton heard it. Funny thing about criminals, he said loudly enough for everyone. They rarely look guilty until paperwork catches up. Yvonne slowly stood inside the room. Every eye shifted toward her through the glass. She stepped closer to the door. Then show them the paperwork. Silence. Small. Sharp. Dutton smiled coldly. You think this is television? No, Yvonne replied. Television usually keeps cameras running. Emotional spike. Deputy Collins looked instinctively toward the disabled interview room camera again. One of the transportation inspectors frowned now. Your recording system offline. Maddox answered instantly. Storm damage. Funny, Yvonne said softly. The weather was clear during most of the missing uploads. The room froze for half a beat. Collins looked at her sharply. Dutton's eyes narrowed. Missing uploads, one inspector repeated. Maddox cut in fast. You are here for highway permits, not internal affairs. Obstacle. Control reclaimed. The inspectors exchanged awkward glances and stepped back. Nobody wanted trouble with Pike County law enforcement after midnight. Fear moved through the room again. Dutton saw it happen and relaxed immediately. False victory settling back into place. He opened the interview room door and grabbed Yvonne's arm. Enough talking. He pulled her into the booking area now where everyone could see her clearly beneath the fluorescent lights. This woman entered Pike County carrying unauthorized surveillance equipment, false documents, and investigative files targeting law enforcement officers. He held up the stack of confiscated papers dramatically. Looks like harassment to me. Several deputies nodded automatically. One dispatcher quietly pulled out her phone beneath the desk. Recording now. Yvonne noticed but said nothing. Dutton leaned closer toward her. You made one mistake, he whispered. You came alone. Then the station printer suddenly activated behind Collins with a violent mechanical screech. Papers began feeding automatically from the machine. Page after page. Nobody had touched it. Collins grabbed the first sheet as it printed. His face changed instantly. At the top of the page sat a partially restored vehicle log from 2 years earlier. Route 9 traffic stop. Bodycam upload confirmed. Officer, C. Dutton. Status, file removed by Administrator H. Pike. Collins looked slowly toward Maddox. Toward Dutton. The room began falling quiet again. And Dutton noticed it too. The printer kept spitting out pages across the booking desk like the station itself was choking on secrets. Deputy Collins stood frozen with the bodycam log in his hands. Route 9 traffic stop. File removed by Administrator H. Pike. Sheriff Maddox moved first. He ripped the paper from Collins so violently the corner tore clean off. System error, Maddox barked. Nothing more. Craig Dutton immediately stepped back into command mode. Everybody back to work. His voice thundered through the station. Now. The dispatchers lowered their eyes. Deputies scattered. Fear moved faster than truth again. Yvonne stood alone in the center of the booking area beneath the harsh fluorescent lights. Public now. Exposed. Dutton pointed directly at her like a prosecutor before a jury. This woman hacked county records. He paced slowly around her. She illegally recorded officers. She stalked public employees. And now she is trying to manufacture evidence. The transportation inspectors exchanged uncertain looks near the front door. One whispered, maybe we should call state police. Maddox snapped toward him instantly. State police already reviewed this county last year. And found nothing, Dutton added with a grin. Because there was nothing. False victory. Loud. Confident. Public. Yvonne remained still while every eye in the station drifted toward her. One dispatcher quietly started recording again beneath the counter. Another deputy looked away entirely. Nobody wanted to stand beside the losing side in Pike County. Dutton stepped closer until only inches separated them. You thought a cheap recorder and some paperwork could destroy careers? He laughed sharply. Lady, men built this county. Men with badges. Men with names people respect. Yvonne's voice stayed quiet. Respect and fear are not the same thing. Emotional spike. Silence hit the room again. Tiny. Sharp. Dutton's smile vanished instantly. Put her in holding. Collins hesitated. Sheriff, Maddox turned slowly. Do not test me tonight, deputy. Collins swallowed hard. The body cam logs still exist somewhere. Dutton slammed his hand against the desk. Enough. He grabbed the stack of recovered printouts and shoved them into a shred bin beside the terminal. There. Problem solved. The machine roared alive immediately, chewing through evidence page by page. Tiny hope destroyed in front of everyone. The drunk man on the bench shook his head weakly. Y'all always do that. Maddox pointed toward him. Get him out of here. Two deputies dragged the man toward the exit while he kept muttering, I seen that officer take cash before. The front door closed behind him. Silence returned. Dutton reached for handcuffs now. Slow. Deliberate. Public humiliation at full force. You know what happens next? He asked Yvonne quietly. You disappear into county lockup. Tomorrow morning your car gets searched. Drugs appear. Maybe assault charges too. He leaned closer. And every person in this room signs off on it because they like their jobs. Several deputies avoided eye contact immediately. One dispatcher wiped tears from her eyes without speaking. Yvonne looked around the station carefully. Not angry. Not broken. Measuring. You trained them well, she said softly. Dutton clicked one cuff around her wrist. I trained them to survive. The second cuff closed. Metal against skin. Loud in the silent station. Across the room, the computer terminal suddenly beeped again. Collins looked back instinctively. A hidden upload window had appeared beneath the disabled system banner. File recovery, 7%. One of the transportation inspectors noticed it too. Wait, he said quietly. What is that? Maddox stepped directly in front of the monitor. Internal maintenance. Looks like a file transfer. Dutton snapped toward the inspectors. You boys came for permits. Do not wander outside your lane. The inspectors fell silent again. Obstacle. Fear won again. Dutton grabbed Yvonne by the arm and started pulling her toward the holding corridor. The station watched. Nobody moved. Nobody helped. Public defeat. Complete. Then Yvonne stopped walking. Not resisting. Just stopping. Dutton yanked harder. Move. Yvonne looked toward the shredded paper bin beside the desk. One torn strip still hung from the machine, not fully destroyed. A partial line remained visible beneath the shredded edge. Federal Joint Task, Maddox saw it too. He ripped the strip free immediately and crushed it in his fist. Take her downstairs, he ordered sharply. Dutton smiled coldly. Gladly. He shoved Yvonne toward the hallway leading to the basement cells. The metal security door buzzed open slowly. Darkness waited below. Then suddenly, from the front entrance behind them, a calm unfamiliar voice cut through the station. Nobody takes her anywhere. The entire room stopped moving. The unfamiliar voice came from the front entrance. Calm. Controlled. Powerful enough to stop the entire sheriff's station mid-breath. Craig Dutton's hand tightened around Yvonne's cuffed wrist. Sheriff Maddox slowly turned toward the doorway. 3 people stood just inside the entrance beneath the flickering fluorescent lights. 2 men in dark suits. 1 older woman carrying a leather briefcase against her chest. No uniforms. No county badges. But the room changed the second they entered. Even the dispatchers stopped typing. "And who exactly are you?" Maddox demanded sharply. The older woman did not answer immediately. Her eyes moved across the station first. The disabled monitor. The shredded paper bin. The handcuffs on Yvonne. Then she looked directly at Dutton. "Release her." Dutton laughed once. Forced. "You got a warrant?" "Do you?" Silence. Tiny. Dangerous. One of the suited men stepped forward holding a sealed document envelope. Maddox immediately moved to block him. "This is an active county investigation." "No," the man replied calmly. "It stopped being county business several months ago." Emotional spike. Several deputies exchanged nervous looks. Deputy Collins stared openly now. Yvonne remained silent beside the holding corridor door. Calm even with handcuffs locked around her wrists. Dutton pointed toward her aggressively. "This woman illegally recorded officers and hacked our system." "Interesting," the older woman said softly. "Because your own station just attempted to delete bodycam archives connected to Officer Dutton." The room fell quieter. The dispatchers stopped whispering. Even the buzzing fluorescent lights suddenly sounded louder. Maddox recovered first. "You people walk in here throwing accusations around and expect us to panic?" His voice cracked slightly near the end. Small fracture. First visible crack. The suited man placed the sealed envelope onto the booking desk. "Open it." Maddox did not touch it. Neither did Dutton. The transportation inspectors near the entrance slowly backed away from the door now, realizing they had walked into something much larger than permit checks. Dutton forced another grin. "Federal bluff." He pointed toward Yvonne. "She came here pretending to be somebody important." Yvonne finally spoke. Quiet. Sharp. "I never pretended." Silence again. A dispatcher lowered her phone from recording position and stared at her openly now. Deputy Collins looked toward the computer terminal where the red warning banner had disappeared completely. In its place sat a recovery screen slowly rebuilding deleted records. File cluster restored, 32%. One line blinked repeatedly near the bottom. Joint Task Force authorization verified. Collins swallowed hard. "Sheriff," Maddox snapped toward him. "Shut that screen down." Collins hesitated. "It will not let me." Tiny hope. The system itself refusing to cooperate anymore. Dutton immediately stepped toward the monitor and slammed his fist against the power button. The screen flickered black. Relief crossed his face for half a second. Then the monitor rebooted automatically. More restored files appeared. Dashcam thumbnails. Evidence logs. Tow invoices. One video preview froze on a frame showing Marcus Reed standing beside his truck with his hands raised while Dutton searched his cab. The old truck driver himself suddenly appeared at the station doorway behind the inspectors. Breathing hard. Rainwater dripping from his cap. "I told you," he said quietly into the stunned silence. "I seen him take cash." Dutton spun toward him instantly. "You better think real careful before talking in here." Marcus flinched. Fear returned immediately. But he did not leave this time. Have you ever watched a room realize the person holding the badge might actually be the danger? The older woman slowly turned toward Yvonne now. Not surprised. Not confused. Respectful. "Are you injured?" she asked. "No." "Did they confiscate your recorder?" "Yes." Dutton stepped between them fast. "Nobody talks to detainees without counsel." His voice was louder now. Harder. Desperate underneath. The older woman's eyes narrowed slightly. Detainee, she repeated. That is an interesting word choice. CTA flowed through the tension naturally now. Because at that moment, everybody in the station was asking the same question: what exactly had Craig Dutton just put handcuffs on? Maddox grabbed the sealed envelope suddenly and tore it open himself. Inside sat a thick stack of printed authorization forms stamped with federal seals. He flipped through them rapidly. His face lost more color with every page. Obstacle. Final denial. Forgery, Dutton barked immediately. This is fake. He pointed toward Yvonne again. She set this whole thing up. The older woman calmly reached into her briefcase and removed one final object wrapped in clear evidence plastic. Small. Black leather. Worn edges. The same case Dutton had glimpsed beneath Yvonne's jacket on Route 9. The entire station stared at it. Nobody moved. Nobody spoke. Then the older woman placed it slowly onto the booking desk beside the handcuff keys and said, before anybody says another word, open it. The black leather case sat in the middle of the booking desk like it weighed 100 pounds. Nobody moved. Nobody breathed loudly anymore. Sheriff Maddox stared at it. Craig Dutton stared at it harder. The older woman folded her hands calmly beside the evidence bag. Open it, she repeated. Dutton forced a laugh that sounded hollow now. This whole circus is built on props. He reached for the case first, trying to reclaim control. Probably fake credentials off the internet. But the second his fingers touched the worn leather, Yvonne finally spoke again. Quiet. Precise. Be careful with federal property, officer. Silence slammed through the room. Deputy Collins looked up instantly. One dispatcher lowered her phone completely. Dutton froze for half a heartbeat before snapping the case open aggressively. Gold flashed beneath the fluorescent lights. The badge sat perfectly centered beside official identification. Federal Bureau of Investigation. Special Agent Yvonne Preston. Nobody spoke. The station itself seemed to stop humming. Dutton stared down at the credentials as if his brain refused to process the words. Maddox's face went pale. One of the transportation inspectors actually stepped backward. The drunk man outside the front window pressed his face against the glass trying to see inside again. No, Dutton muttered immediately. No, this is fake. The older woman reached calmly into her briefcase and removed another folder. Assistant Director Helen Mercer, she said, introducing herself for the first time. Federal Bureau of Investigation. She laid the folder beside the badge. Inside were signed surveillance authorizations, federal warrants, and task force approvals stamped across multiple pages. Special Agent Preston has been operating undercover for 14 months investigating corruption tied to Route 9 traffic seizures, unlawful detainment, extortion, and evidence destruction. Emotional spike. Every eye in the room swung toward Yvonne now. Not the quiet traveler anymore. Not the woman in wet sleeves and motel receipts. The agent. Dutton shook his head violently. She never identified herself. Because your officer shoved her against a patrol car before she could reach the credential case, Mercer answered coldly. Collins looked physically sick now. Oh my God, Maddox stepped forward aggressively. This does not prove anything against my department. Mercer opened another folder. Actually, Sheriff, it proves quite a lot. She slid printed photographs across the booking desk one by one. Dutton taking cash beside his cruiser. Tow trucks arriving before citations were filed. Deleted bodycam timestamps. Judge Harold Pike's administrative override logs. The room went dead silent with every new image. Then Mercer placed the final photograph on top. Marcus Reed standing beside his truck 2 years earlier while Dutton held cash folded beneath his citation pad. Marcus stepped slowly into the station fully now. That was my rent money, he said quietly. Dutton turned toward him instantly. You lying son of, finish that sentence carefully, Mercer interrupted. Sharp. Final. Dutton stopped talking. First real crack. Yvonne still had not moved from where Dutton left her in cuffs. She simply watched the room absorb the truth piece by piece. Collins looked toward her with shame all over his face. You were gathering evidence the whole time. People here stopped believing anyone would listen, Yvonne replied softly. So I listened. Emotional spike again. One dispatcher began crying quietly behind the desk. The transportation inspector stepped farther away from Dutton now, like corruption itself might spread by contact. Maddox tried one last time. You think some photos and recordings overturn years of service? Mercer looked directly at him. No, she tapped the restored terminal screen. Your own system did that. Collins slowly turned the monitor back toward the room. The recovered files now displayed full case archives. 61 traffic stops flagged under internal review. 22 missing body cam uploads. 14 unexplained tow seizures. One line blinking red at the top. Joint Task Force active. Judge Harold Pike cooperating witness. Dutton's face completely lost color. Pike flipped, he whispered before he could stop himself. Silence exploded through the room. He had just confirmed it himself. Mercer looked at him carefully now. Thank you for clarifying that on record. Dutton staggered back one step. The deputies around him no longer looked at him like a superior officer. They looked at him like evidence. Yvonne calmly extended her cuffed wrists toward Collins. He swallowed hard, then reached for the keys with shaking hands. Agent Preston, his voice cracked slightly. I am sorry. Yvonne looked at him steadily. Then stop protecting men who count on silence. Collins unlocked the cuffs. The metal clicked open loud enough for everyone to hear. Power reversal. Complete. Dutton stared at the freed handcuffs in disbelief while Mercer handed Yvonne another recovered evidence file from the desk. Yvonne opened it slowly. Inside sat one final photograph she had never seen before. Her father beside his old blue pickup truck the night he was stopped on Route 9 20 years earlier. And standing beside him in a deputy uniform much younger but unmistakable, was Sheriff Earl Maddox. The photograph trembled slightly in Yvonne's hand. Sheriff Earl Maddox. 20 years younger. Standing beside her father on the shoulder of Route 9 while the old blue pickup sat under flashing patrol lights. Craig Dutton saw the picture too and immediately looked away. That tiny movement told the room everything. He already knew. Helen Mercer stepped forward slowly. Sheriff Maddox, she said calmly, you are under federal investigation for obstruction of justice, evidence tampering, conspiracy to violate civil rights, and suppression of official recordings. Silence swallowed the station whole. Maddox forced a laugh that sounded brittle now. You think one old photo proves corruption? Mercer nodded toward the recovered monitor. No, Collins turned the screen fully toward the room. Dashcam files continued restoring one after another. Traffic stops. Missing reports. Cash seizures. Citizens standing frightened beside the highway while officers laughed off camera. One restored audio file began playing automatically through the terminal speakers. Dutton's voice filled the station again. 200 cash or your truck disappears tonight. Marcus Reed lowered his head slowly. That was me. Emotional spike. Public consequence had started. Dutton pointed wildly toward the monitor. Edited. Every damn bit of it. Mercer slid a federal evidence chain onto the booking desk. Verified through 3 independent forensic labs. Dutton's mouth opened. Nothing came out. Maddox tried once more to hold authority together. This county kept order. No, Yvonne said quietly. You kept people afraid. The room stayed silent after that. Even the deputies who once stood behind Maddox avoided looking at him now. One dispatcher removed her county ID badge and quietly placed it on the counter like she suddenly no longer wanted to wear it. Mercer extended her hand toward Dutton. "Your badge." Dutton did not move. "You do not have jurisdiction over county law enforcement." Mercer answered without blinking. "Federal Task Force Authority says otherwise." Two suited agents stepped forward from the entrance. Calm. Prepared. Dutton's confidence finally cracked completely. "This is because of one traffic stop," he snapped at Yvonne. "You destroyed careers over one damn stop." Yvonne looked directly at him. 61 stops. Marcus spoke from behind her. "Probably more." Tiny murmurs spread through the station now. One deputy whispered, "Jesus," another quietly asked Collins, "Were we all part of this?" Collins stared at the floor. "We knew enough." Public shame replaced public fear. Mercer held out her hand again. "Badge. Weapon. Duty keys." Dutton's breathing grew uneven. Then slowly, painfully, he unclipped the sheriff department badge from his chest and dropped it onto the booking desk beside Yvonne's black leather FBI case. The metallic sound echoed through the station louder than shouting ever could. Status reversal complete. Maddox backed toward the office hallway. "You are making a mistake." "No," Mercer replied. "We are documenting one." The two federal agents moved beside him immediately. One read formal charges while the other collected his service weapon. Maddox looked toward Yvonne one final time. "Your father should have stayed quiet." The room froze. Even Mercer turned sharply toward him. Yvonne's eyes did not leave Maddox's face. "So you do remember him?" Maddox realized too late what he had admitted. Emotional spike. Collins looked horrified now. "Sheriff, you were there." Maddox said nothing. Silence became confession. Yvonne carefully placed the old photograph onto the booking desk beside Dutton's surrendered badge. Two objects. 20 years apart. One family humiliated on the roadside. One corrupt system finally exposed under fluorescent lights. Marcus stepped closer slowly. "They took my truck." Another voice came from the doorway behind him. The diner waitress from earlier. "They threatened my son." Then another truck driver appeared outside the glass doors holding a towing invoice. More witnesses were arriving now. People who had stayed silent for years. Tiny fear leaving one person at a time. Mercer looked toward the growing crowd outside the station. Pike County is reopening every impound case tied to Route 9. One dispatcher quietly started crying again. All those people, Yvonne finally looked at her. Calm. Human. Then start writing the truth this time. Moral justice settled over the room slowly. No cheering. No revenge. Just the heavy sound of power collapsing under its own lies. Collins stepped toward Yvonne carefully and handed her the folded motel receipt she had protected since the highway stop. Still damp. Still wrinkled. "You held on to this the whole night?" he asked softly. Yvonne unfolded it once more. Route 9. Camera down 11:42 p.m. Her father's handwriting stared back at her through faded blue ink. She swallowed quietly for the first time all night. Mercer noticed. "Agent Preston," she said gently now, "the review board wants your statement upstairs." Yvonne looked toward the staircase leading above the station offices. Then toward the growing crowd outside the glass doors. Among them stood a little boy holding his mother's hand, staring at her the way frightened people look at someone who finally fought back. And for the first time in years, Yvonne realized the investigation was over, but the wound underneath it was not. Morning light spilled across the Pike County Sheriff's Office for the first time in years without fear attached to it. The flashing patrol lights were gone now. Federal vehicles lined the curb quietly while reporters stood behind barricades outside the station entrance. Nobody shouted anymore. Nobody laughed. People simply watched. Sheriff Earl Maddox sat silently near the booking desk in plain clothes, wrists cuffed in front of him. Craig Dutton stared at the floor beside him, his former badge sealed inside a clear evidence bag. The same badge he once believed made him untouchable. Yvonne Preston stood near the front doors holding her father's old photograph carefully between both hands. The edges looked softer in daylight. Less like evidence now. More like memory. Deputy Collins approached slowly carrying a cardboard archive box filled with recovered case files. "We found more," he said quietly. "Hidden storage room downstairs. Tow receipts. Missing recordings. Names." Yvonne looked into the box. Dozens of folders. Lives interrupted by roadside fear. How many people? Collins swallowed hard. More than we thought. Emotional payoff settled heavily through the station. One dispatcher quietly taped a printed notice near the front counter. All Route 9 impound cases under review. Citizens may file claims without fees. The transportation inspectors who once stayed silent were now helping organize evidence tables. Tiny changes. Real changes. Marcus Reed stepped inside wearing a clean denim jacket instead of the stained work shirt from the highway stop. He held a small envelope awkwardly in both hands. "Miss Preston," he said softly. "They released my truck this morning." Yvonne smiled gently for the first time. "Good." Marcus opened the envelope carefully. Inside sat the original towing invoice from 2 years earlier stamped paid in full by federal order. "I kept thinking nobody cared what happened out here," he admitted. "People cared," Yvonne answered. "Fear just convinced them to stay quiet." Nearby, one of the younger deputies slowly removed the "camera offline" sticker from the interview room door while maintenance crews restored the recording systems. Another deputy carried boxes labeled evidence recovery toward federal agents. System consequence. Quiet but permanent. Helen Mercer stepped beside Yvonne holding the black leather FBI case that started everything. The gold badge inside caught morning sunlight now instead of fluorescent suspicion. Mercer offered it back carefully. "You never stopped carrying it," she said. Yvonne took the case slowly. "My father taught me something before he died." Mercer waited. Yvonne looked toward the front highway beyond the station windows. A badge only matters if people behind it remember who they are supposed to protect. Emotional spike. The little boy from outside the station yesterday stood near the doorway now holding his mother's hand. He stared up at Yvonne with wide uncertain eyes. "Are you the lady who stopped the bad cop?" he asked quietly. The room softened around the question. Even Collins smiled faintly. Yvonne knelt carefully so she was eye level with him. "A lot of people stopped him," she said. She looked toward Marcus. Toward Collins. Toward the dispatcher who recorded quietly instead of looking away. Some people just needed help believing their voice mattered. The boy nodded slowly like he would remember that sentence for years. Collins stepped forward again holding one final object. The old motel receipt. Wrinkled. Damp edges dried stiff overnight. Route 9. Camera down 11:42 p.m. Her father's handwriting still visible in faded blue ink. "We almost shredded this," Collins admitted softly. "But evidence should not disappear anymore." Yvonne accepted it carefully. Not as proof now. As dignity returned. Outside the station, local workers had already begun removing the old Route 9 impound signs from county trucks. One of the federal agents handed Marcus a list of approved reimbursement claims. Another helped an elderly couple retrieve property from evidence storage. The county was learning a different language now. Accountability. Mercy. Truth. Maddox finally looked up from his chair as agents prepared to move him. Your father hated this place, he muttered toward Yvonne. She held the old photograph against her chest calmly. No, she answered softly. He hated what fear turned people into. Silence followed. Not hostile this time. Human. Healing. Yvonne stepped through the front doors of the station and into the warm Louisiana morning. No handcuffs. No flashing lights. Just sunlight stretching across Route 9 while the crowd outside slowly parted to let her pass. Some lowered their phones. Some lowered their heads. And one by one, people who once felt powerless finally began walking forward to tell the truth.